And so the quote says, "Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There is nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine as children do. We were born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It's not just in some of us, it's in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. We are liberated from our own fear. Our presence automatically liberates others." Hi, welcome back to another episode of Unique Moments, where I talk about things from a unique perspective. Okay, we are back, and this episode I'm going to be talking about self-sabotage. So before we get into it, I am going to pull a card. Okay, very appropriate. We got inner journey. And I think in regards to the episode, when we self-sabotage, it's an inner thing. It's a thing of self. It's not having to do with anyone that literally called self-sabotage. It's about your inner journey, your inner world. The deeper meaning behind self-sabotage is something that's going on internally with you. So that's what we're going to get into when we talk about it. But this card, I think it's also just saying to pay attention to what's going on inside. A lot of the times when we self-sabotage, it's very unconscious. Like, we don't even know we're doing it. Because when you think about it, okay, who would want to sabotage themselves? Like, self-sabotaging is literally getting in your own way. Any conscious, sane person, you want yourself to do well. You want to excel in life. You want to be the best version of yourself. You want to be the best that you can be. So at what point does that entail ruining everything for you, or ruining your relationship, ruining your chance at a job opportunity, just getting in your own way of excelling at your dreams or completing your goals? Like, no one wants to do that. No one in their right mind is like, how can I sabotage myself to prevent myself from getting everything I ever want? Like, we don't do that because it's like a very unconscious thing. And I think I want to talk about, one, defining self-sabotage, and then two, obviously how we can avoid it and kind of where it comes from, and maybe some examples. I'm sure most people have experienced this, and again, it's like, it's unconscious. It kind of sneaks up on you sometimes. It's very sneaky because it's like, I don't know where it comes from, but I mean, I think to the card is an inner journey. Like, you kind of would have to stop. If you're self-sabotaging yourself, you would have to stop and literally be like, why am I doing that? Like, what is... Honestly, it's mostly a fear that you have. Like, say you have a fear of success. So you're self-sabotaging yourself and you never go after the job that you really want, and you prevent yourself from getting it because your fear of being successful, which is weird in itself. But yeah, so that's what we're going to talk about. And I think that card is very appropriate. Inner journey. Okay, so one of the things that I want to bring in this episode is a quote from Marianne Williamson. And it's one of my favorite quotes, and I think it's very, very accurate. So a lot of the times, again, self-sabotage is going to be unconscious because it's not a thing that we want to do. And so this quote kind of just reminds me of like kind of our deepest fears. And I think this has a lot to do with why we self-sabotage. So the quote comes from her book, A Return to Love, Reflections on the Principles of A Course in Miracles, and 10 out of 10 recommend that book. I've read it. I'm reading it for the third time now, and I get something new every time I read it. It's just a great book. It's magnificent. It's wonderful. And there's a lot of good gems, a lot of good nuggets in that book. And so the quote says, "Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, Who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There is nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine as children do. We were born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It's not just in some of us, it's in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. And that's just a beautiful quote, because I think, especially in the age of today where, I think that people are kind of waking up, to energy and being around energy vampires and people who are draining you and leaving situations that aren't serving you. I think on a conscious level, the world and humanity, we're kind of waking up and adopting good habits. What are good sleeping habits? What are good eating habits? What are good social habits? We want to be better. We want to be our most optimal selves. And I don't think that that's lost on anyone in this generation. However, I do think that, again, with the quote, it's an unconscious thing that we think, oh, if we remain humble, or, oh, if we dim our light, then other people can shine brighter because maybe they don't have the same access that I have. Maybe they don't have the same background that I have. Maybe they're less fortunate than me, and we think we're being humble, or we think we're doing a service to somebody, which is really a disservice to everybody, including ourselves, when we don't give it our best, when we don't shine our light. And I think if you grew up in church, or if you just have any concept of religion or God or a higher power, I think it's easier to grasp the concept of literally being your best and doing all that you can do, because you have this belief of God that someone is either watching you 24/7 and you're under surveillance. So it's I better be doing my best, or you have this inner want and desire to not want to disappoint. And maybe it's not to God, maybe it's to your parents, or maybe it's to your friends, or maybe it's to yourself. You have this inner voice, this inner compass of, I don't want to let myself down. I don't want to let my parents down. I have to be the best. I have to do everything that I can do to get everything that I can out of this life. And I think that's a very conscious thing that we all want. But when we get into self-sabotage, like I said, I think a lot of it kind of flies under the radar. And so basically I defined it as getting in your own way. And some examples are, say you are close to burning out, whether it's with school, finals, or you've just taken too many classes, or your brain is literally malfunctioning, or whether it's at work, you're working too many hours, whether it's at the gym, you are starving yourself, you're overworking yourself. When you're close to burnout and your body is please, can we take a break? Please, 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 please. I just want to rest. I just want to sleep for 10 hours. Please, oh, please, oh, please, oh, please. That's what your body's saying. And then the form of self-sabotage would be you pushing yourself beyond that. Now, on the one hand, I do think, yes, pressure makes diamonds. And yes, we can do exceedingly and abundantly above all things that you can ask or think with the power of the Lord. Yes, all those things are very true, and you can push yourself out of your comfort zone, you can push yourself out of your box, and you can accomplish the impossible. Quite literally, we're superhumans, we're super creatures, superhuman beings. We can do whatever. But I think in a different context, when you're close to burnout and your body's begging you for a break and then you push yourself anyway, that is a form of self-sabotage. Because then when you're not listening to your body, when you're not resting, when you're not taking those breaks, then something happens. Either you get sick, or your health declines, or you have an injury. Something is going to happen for your body to be hey, I tried to warn you, I tried to tell you, but you didn't listen, so now look what happens. And that's you self-sabotaging, because that could have been prevented had you just taken the break that your body was asking for. And then another example, reason tells you to eat healthier, or maybe your body tells you to eat healthier. You're feeling overweight, you're feeling tired, you're feeling lethargic, and so you're I need to change my diet. I need to change my eating habits. And so that's a conscious thought that you have. And so the self-sabotage piece would be that inner voice that tells you to eat the chocolate, or start the diet later, or we can start tomorrow, we can start next month. I have to start at the beginning of the month on the first day because that's when I'll feel more motivated. That's a form of self-sabotage as well, because you're delaying your success by all of these thoughts and made up things that you, I mean, yeah, maybe strategically if you set that New Year's resolution and you start January 1st, you'll accomplish the goal. But who's to say if you don't start it right now, literally like mid-December, you won't accomplish the same thing? And I think that's also a form of self-sabotage, because you're like listening to that inner voice that's like, we have to do it this way, and it has to be at this time on this day, and we have to be in this mindset, we have to have this meal plan, and da-da-da-da. And it's like you're self-sabotaging yourself because you're holding yourself back, again, getting in your own way of just eating healthier, of doing the thing, thinking that it has to look a certain way or be a certain way, or you have to be a certain weight. Like, it doesn't have to be like that. You can literally just start. And then another example that I wrote down was if your inner voice tells you that you're not qualified for a job or for a position, or maybe even for a for a job or for a position, and so you don't apply. Like, you look at the qualifications and it's like 7 years experience in this, master's degree, and granted, don't be delusional. Obviously, if you don't have the experience for something, that's not for you. However, again, we can do things beyond our capacity. We're powerful beyond measure, going beyond the quote, or going back to the quote. And so not applying for the position just because you think you're not qualified, or not putting yourself out there because you think that you're not good enough, or you're not ready, or you're not as advanced, that is also a form of self-sabotage, because who's to say that the skills and qualifications that you have in this moment are not enough? And so you don't even give yourself the opportunity to see. You don't even give yourself the opportunity to like feel it out. And that's a form of self-sabotage, because you're ending the journey before it even begins. And so a lot of the reasons why we self-sabotage goes back to beliefs formed in childhood. So some of the causes of self-sabotage are self-doubt, self-confidence, low self-esteem, learned behavior, and high demands on self. And then the main reason why we self-sabotage is fear. And that could look like a numerous amount of things: fear of failure, fear of success, fear of loss, fear of commitment, fear of rejection. You have all these fears. And so you're like, oh, I'm going to get rejected for this part, I'm not even going to go out for it. I think I'll fail at this, so I'm not even going to try. I think I'll excel at this, fear of success, so I'm not even going to try. Oh, I think love just ends in loss anyway. Like, it never works out, so I'm not going to be in a relationship. I'm just not going to try. And so all of these ways we self-sabotage. And a big one is, I think, just low self-confidence and low self-esteem. And while that does take, I don't want to say a while, but it takes some inner work. Going back to the card, it's an inner journey of, okay, why am I self-sabotaging this? I have low self-esteem. I have low self-confidence. Why do I have low self-confidence? Like, is it the way I look? Is it the way I speak? Is it the way I dress? Is it the way I act? What is causing me to feel so low about myself that I am preventing myself from going after everything that I ever want, because I think I have this weird way of speaking, or that people aren't going to accept me, or that people aren't going to like me? And it goes back to the inner journey, the inner thoughts. It's a very inner thing. Like, a lot of the times, that's why it's called self-sabotage, because you're doing it to yourself. And so, yeah, a lot of it goes back to beliefs, our beliefs that we have. What beliefs are we holding that's causing me to act in a way that's not pointed for my best interests? And then some of the ways to recognize that you're self-sabotaging, because a lot of the times, I know, at least for myself, because I have definitely self-sabotaged quite a bit of things. But that's neither here nor there, because we're still here and we are thriving, okay? And you can always come back from self-sabotage, I think, when you recognize it. But the thing is recognizing it. So some of the ways to recognize it, and a lot of the times it is almost too late, but hopefully you can catch it early. So some of the ways is like, you realize that you're going in circles in life, and sometimes that looks like you meeting the same peoples, or you meeting the same people, or you finding yourself in the same kind of stuck situation in the routine of your life, or you just not progressing, not moving forward, like you're literally going in a circle. Like if you look back in your life and the last 5 years look like the last 5 years, and the next 5 years look like the last 5 years, you may be self-sabotaging in some way. But now if you want to stay the same, and if your life is perfect and grand and great and you wouldn't change a thing, then fine, that's your rhythm, that's your groove, that's your desire that you want for your life. But if you realize that your life looks the same year after year after year and you don't like that, then that might be a sign that you are self-sabotaging some way, somehow in your life. And then at that point, when you recognize it and you identify it, then it's your job to say, okay, how can I change this? How can I make the change? And then another way to recognize it is if you're like never satisfied with your performance. I think being a perfectionist is one thing. If you have Virgo placements, shout out to y'all, because I don't know how you do it. But I think being a perfectionist is one thing. So it's one thing to want to have a quality finished product, or be put together, or seem like you have all your ducks in a row. That's one thing. But not being satisfied with your performance, whether that's, in whatever area of your life, that can also be a sign of self-sabotage, because it's like you feel like nothing you do is good enough, even though quite literally it's probably like better than most people, but you feel like it's not good enough. And so the self-sabotage piece comes in because you're like, okay, how can I make this better? How can I improve here? How can I do here? And it's like sabotaging yourself in a way that's not allowing it to be good enough. Like you're not allowing yourself to be satisfied. You're not allowing the task at hand to be satisfied. And so while there is always room for improvement just in life in general, like of course, like we don't want to be mediocre. We don't want to just settle for any kind of finished product. Like you want it to be your best. But the issue is when you literally put out your best and then a voice still says, okay, how can I change this? How can I make this better? It's not good enough. Like there's a self-sabotaging piece, because then we get back into the low self-esteem, low self-worth, lack of self-confidence. Like, why do you think that what you're doing is not good enough? If it's not a trash product, I mean, like, okay, why can't you be satisfied with it? And never being satisfied with something is a form of self-sabotage, because in the end, if you're never satisfied with your performance, with your work, with yourself, with your appearance, with whatever, if you're never satisfied, you're never going to allow yourself to graduate or to go beyond or to move past, because it's like once you complete a level, once you conquer a level, then it's like, okay, on to the next. But if you're never satisfied, you're constantly working on yourself, if you're constantly healing, if you're constantly trying to make more money, if you're constantly trying to perfect your whatever it is, if you're constantly trying to figure out something, like, and you're not satisfied with where you are, you're preventing yourself from going to the next level. You're holding yourself back. You're getting in your own way, hence the self-sabotage. And then another way to recognize it is not being able to say no. Now, I can't relate to this. Happy to say, can't relate to this. But people who have a hard time saying no, or who tend to people please, or who tend to want to look a certain way, and you sign yourself up for everything, or you never say no, or you put yourself in compromising positions because no is like not in your vocabulary, that's also not good, because then if you're not saying no to anything, you're saying yes to everything, and everything can't be a yes. Like, even if you have the most time, the most free time, even if you can clear your schedule and you can make energy available and, spread yourself out here with this person on this day, your social calendar's full, like that's fine. It's good to have a healthy, active social life and to be doing things and participating and connecting with people. That's wonderful. It's beautiful. But when you can't say no, you're sabotaging yourself from all the things that you could have and all the things that you could do had you said no to this engagement, had you said no to this person. And I think it really comes into play whenever You say yes, but you want to say no. Like, it's different if, like, you want to say yes. And, like, keep yesing. Be a yes man. That's fine. If you want to say yes to this, if you want to go to this, if you want to do this, cool. But it's when you don't want to do something and you say yes anyway because you can't say no. Gotta learn to say no. Because if you keep doing that, again, you're going to burn yourself out. And again, you're going to sabotage yourself, because then you're expending all of your energy, whether it's a phone call, whether it's a dinner, an event, an appointment, a client, whatever it is. And you're just trying to say yes all the time and show up for people and do things. And you don't have any energy left for yourself. When you don't have any energy left for yourself, it's like you're just using what's left. Now you're working off of reserves. You're not working off of your full undivided attention, replenished energy, because you've given it all away. And so if you're starting from there, it's like you're starting from 50% or you're starting from 30% of your energy versus starting from 100%. And so by nature, you're sabotaging yourself already because you're not putting yourself in the best position to succeed, in the best position to move forward, because you've given everybody all of your energy. And so not being able to say no is very key in recognizing how you're self-sabotaging. And then some things I did right. So how to overcome. I think it's a lot of different things, depending on who you are, where you are in life, and what you can actively do. So to overcome self-sabotaging, first of all, you do have to recognize it. Like, that's a key. Because if you don't recognize you're doing it, you quite literally can't change it because you don't even know you're doing it. And so that's the first thing. But once you've recognized and once you've identified, like, hey, I may be self-sabotaging myself in this area of my life. Just because you're self-sabotaging doesn't mean that you're sabotaging every single area of your life. It could literally just be, oh, I sabotage all my relationships. Why is that? I have a fear of commitment. Why is that? Again, with the inner journey, asking yourself these questions. And then you can begin to heal that. Oh, I noticed that I want to be a certain weight, but I'm overweight, and I keep sabotaging myself by eating unhealthy things. Why is that? Why do I do that? Where does that come from? Asking these questions. And so to overcome that, if you find yourself self-sabotaging, one thing, focus on your successes. Focus on the things that you do right. Because if you notice, wow, like, I'm really not progressing, or I really could be doing better. Like, it's very easy to fall into a trap and to fall into a loop of self-deprecating. I'm never going to be good enough. I don't do anything right. I can't advance in my life. Everyone's moving ahead of me and I'm behind, and yada, 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 blah, blah, blah. It's easy to fall into that when you're not paying attention to your successes and you're only paying attention to how you're sabotaging. So one remedy to that is to see what you're doing right and, really milk that and really soak that in, because then when you prove to yourself, like, oh, I'm excelling in this area, like, maybe my relationships suck, but hey, I'm in the gym 5 times a week, 6 times a week. Maybe, I'm not doing so good at work, but hey, my friendships, my relationships are thriving. Like, focus on that. Focus on the good things, because then you're proving to yourself that, okay, I know how to excel in certain areas, and then you can transfer that to other areas of your life. And then another way to overcome self-sabotage, again, tying in with that, is don't compare yourself to others. Again, with the I'm behind in life, especially in this age of social media that we live in. Like, be on social media, do your thing, make your money, do whatever you do. But don't compare yourself, because then it's one thing to compare yourself for motivation. Like, it's one thing to be like, oh, okay, they did it, I can do it too. That's positive, super healthy. But it's another thing to be like, wow, they're there at 25 and I'm here at 27. Like, what am I doing? Like, we want to get out of that. We want to avoid that, because everyone's on their own journey. Everyone's running their own race in their own life. And there's just really no reason to compare. And so don't compare yourself to others, because nothing positive can come of it unless you're using it for motivation, unless you're using it for fuel. But a way to overcome the self-sabotage is not comparing yourself, because then when you take other people out of the equation and when you say, okay, wait a minute, I'm running my own race, I'm living my own life, and I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be at all times. Everything is working out for me. Everything is literally happening for me, not to me. When you start talking to yourself like that, then you're not self-sabotaging, because there's nothing to sabotage. And then another way to overcome self-sabotage is silencing the inner critic. And again, Virgos keep popping in my head, and they just have this thing of like, on the one hand, it's good because they're very meticulous, very detailed, very low-key judgmental, and they just like notice everything, nitpick everything, judge everything, take everything into account. And while it is good to have that kind of eye, that keen eye for pointing out what's wrong and what needs to be changed and what needs to be fixed and noticing everything, it's like that can also be a hindrance, because then you develop this perfectionist mentality and you develop this inner critic that's like, this is not good enough, do it over. This is not good enough, do it over. This is not good enough, do it over. They're not good enough. We don't want that. We don't want that. And like, there's nothing wrong with setting a standard for yourself. There's nothing wrong with having standards in life. But it's when that inner critic gets too loud and they stop you from literally doing the things you want to do, because everything has to be perfect. Everything has to be like this. Everything has to be like this. And like, do that if you want to, but it's just like, that's a way to lead to self-sabotage, and we're trying to overcome that. So to overcome that, just silence that inner voice sometimes and like, overpower it with the, hey, I'm doing my best. Of course, if you are doing your best. If you're just skating by, you're really not giving energy and time to anything, don't lie to yourself and say, oh yeah, I'm doing my best. No, you're not. You could be working harder. But if you are doing your best, just like relax, just like chill out. Just chill out and silence that inner critic, and you won't be sabotaging yourself. And then some other things, just taking small steps. And I wrote lowering your expectations, but I think that's a tricky thing, because if you lower your expectations, then what you get might not be what you want. But I think the point in saying lower your expectations is to not have them so high that you're not meeting them. Because it's one thing to have high expectations because you want more for yourself. So I'm going to have high expectations for myself and my behavior because I'm going to demand more of myself. And when I do that, I am more. I become a better version of myself. And who doesn't want that? But I think when the expectations are too high, they're unreachable, they're unattainable. And then it goes back to the self-deprecating, the low self-esteem. Well, why can't I do this? What's wrong with me that I can't No, baby, you set your expectation too high for where you are at in life. And so when you lower that expectation, you're able to better meet the goal. And when you meet the goal, that's a success, that's a win. And how do we overcome self-sabotage? By celebrating our wins and celebrating our successes. So just don't have too many crazy expectations, and you'll be all right. And you'll really be all right, and take baby steps. Like, it's not a race. It's not a race. What do they say? It's not a race. It's not a sprint. It's a journey. It's about the destination. All the things. All the things, and they're all true. And so that's pretty much all I got for self-sabotage. If you find that you're self-sabotaging, just take a beat, take a moment. And if something is happening in your life that you don't like, analyze it, go inward, begin your inner journey, and figure out how to fix it and figure out how to change it. But be easy on yourself. Don't be critical. Don't be too overly critical, because then it's like that sneaky thing. It's unconscious. So like if you say, okay, I'm self-sabotaging, where am I self-sabotaging? I'm sabotaging my relationships. I'm sabotaging my well-being. Like, notice and then make the change. Don't sit in that knowing, because we can nitpick all day long. Like, I'm sure I could find many, many things that I don't like. I can find many, many things that could be better, could improve. But it's like you have to go from naming and labeling and recognizing to, okay, how can we overcome this? Because it's easy to stay in that. This could be better, this could be better, this could be different, this could be different. But what are we doing to change that? What are we doing to overcome that? And that, my friends, is how to combat self-sabotage in a tiny, tiny nutshell. I'm sure there's way more things you can do, but that's my take. And until next time.